we will have the panelists answer those questions by typing the answers. And so thank you very much and for the lively discussion. And so let's move on to the next session, which will be moderated by Heping Zhang from Yale University.
Thank you, Xihong. I want to thank Xihong and all the panelists in the first session for the wonderful discussion. And I hope our session, next one will match with the first session. And so the next session will be on statistics and machine learning data science journals in the age of AI. And I already see a lot of questions asking about publication and journals, not surprisingly. So this session will begin with Annie Chu, who is a Chancellor's Professor of Statistics, University of California at Irvine. Annie, you can begin.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for the stimulating discussion. And go to the next slide. So actually today I'm going to really talk about the problem and think about the strategy to improve our journal publication. I heard so many complaints talk about our journals so slow, right? Just think about we work on some problem maybe 2 or 3 years ago, then finally get published another year. It's like it takes 3 years, finally get something published. And maybe the material we publish later maybe could be irrelevant and it's already obsolete. So this is really a big issue, especially in the era of the AI. It is a fast-growing field. So think about, well, I have to think deep why we are slow, right? Even writing a paper takes a lot of time, especially if you want to publish top 4 journals. We know what is top 4 journals. We need to have very innovative methods, innovative theory. And we also need to have a reasonable, not too restrictive assumptions. We have to really excellent glowing numerical performance and very convincing real data analysis. On the top of that, you need to write a very clear and easy to understand this kind of writing, okay? So therefore, writing and published paper, it's already very slow. And next slide. And review also very, very slow. But although we have to acknowledge that over the time, our turnaround time actually is gradually improving. Actually, I handled this JADA paper. I know that we actually moving forward. So question is that we cannot compare certain fields. Let's say I also publish in the medical science. They just like 2 weeks. You have to train the report. In our field, it's maybe impossible, maybe possible, because if you train report very quickly, the quality is very poor. Only a few lines, what's the use of this kind of review process, right? So first we need to have a responsible editors and responsible associate editors and referees. But let's think about what things we can do. Certainly, if you do screening out the papers, which you think have a 0 chance or very low chance to publish, we should screen out in the very beginning. So don't waste this author's time. But we also, I think, is really on the referee and AE side. And I think about we can provide awards for the best AE or best referees. This is what I learned from the business journal. So they actually do very good high quality reviewing system and they try to do very fast. And my student told me that, say, if you don't do a good referee report, you will not get strong letters from associate editors or editors. So really associate editors and editor also help them for the promotion process. Next slide. So on the other hand, realize it's all volunteer work that referee AE don't get paid for it. So you really need to make them feel excited reading your papers, right? On the author side, you need to write high quality, exciting papers and really work on motivated problems. So I think motivated problems also mention usefulness, impactfulness, and solve really important problems in domain science. So let's talk about the data. So original data from your own lab team might not be very common. A lot of us cannot produce original data. But if you do, your co-author have this data, really add big values because we not just writing statistical methodology theory paper, we also talking about scientific discovery, okay? And some data is often just like use a public source, some is a purchase, like a UK Biobank data. But I also see some just really tall examples and totally not convincing. So this, I think we try to avoid for some author. Next slides. So again, like you buying a house, talk about location, location, location. publishing, we really emphasize innovation, innovation, and innovation. So we need some imagination. Let's go to the next slide. Yeah, so this is a recent effort from JAXA. We're going to have a special issues on statistical science and artificial intelligence, and hopefully we can integrate the statistical AI method to really advance scientific discovery and trustworthy AI. So this is a journal, editors, including 2 guest editors. Last slide. I don't have time to talk about citations, but I think this is something we should be aware. The last slide, last slide. So say one person say my paper has been just published by scientific journal, and the other person say, yeah, my tweets have just been favored by 3 people. Okay, so this is something we could also talk later about the citation and impact. Thank you.
Thank you, Annie, for your insight. And we may come back to some of your points when we during the discussion. So the next panelist is Qi Zhu. He is a professor of statistics at the University of Michigan. He's also editor-in-chief for the Annals of Applied Statistics. Qi, please.
Oh yeah, thanks, Heping. And also, yeah, thanks to Annie for a comprehensive account of the publication process. I will further emphasize on a few points that she raised. Next slide, please. So yeah, while Annie, highlighted the importance of innovation from the perspective of author, I would like to ask our editors, associate editors, and reviewers to also prioritize novelty when reviewing and evaluating a paper. One example we all know is Leo Breiman's random forest. If you read the paper, the paper doesn't fully explain the theoretical properties of random forests, and some conjectures in the paper were actually even incorrect. But despite this, the work remains a big milestone in machine learning. Another example is Jerry Friedman's Mars paper. This is, in my opinion, a beautifully written paper, and Breiman wished that he had thought of the idea himself. But in fact, the paper, as an Annals of Statistics discussion paper, does not contain any theorems. The statistics view of boosting paper mentioned earlier by Hao, this is also an example. Again, this is a discussion paper in Annals of Statistics. It doesn't have any asymptotic results, but it made a significant impact to both our field and machine learning. So these papers, they have helped to establish statisticians prominently in the field of machine learning. And also, if you think about it, 30 or 20 years ago, such papers without asymptotic results could be published in top statistical journals. The question is, would they today? Right? I think this is something for all of us, including the editors, the AEs, and the reviewers to think about. This is not against the theory, but this is just to try to promote more on novelty when we evaluate papers. Next slide, please. Thank you. So on the review process, and we all know, and Annie also mentioned, that the length of review time is a challenge. But even before that, there's another challenge, which is finding reviewers. I have heard from many AEs complaining that they often need to ask 10 or even more than 10 people before they can secure 2 or 3 reviewers. There have been proposals to address these challenges. The 2 ideas I put here with the cross-checks may not be feasible, but they highlight the issues. As Annie mentioned, rewarding efficient and thorough AEs and reviewers could be a step forward, but it's probably not enough. The question is what else we might do to motivate our editorial community. I think this is still an open question. Having open reviews after the paper is accepted, this is an idea that might help to foster discussions and also help improve the visibility of our work. Next slide, please. So turning to Annals of Applied Statistics, our mission is to publish application-driven research that also goes beyond the specific application and push the statistical boundaries. Within AOAS, there have been discussions on whether there's a need for more data-centric papers as opposed to solely application-centric ones, and whether we should have more discussion papers. My personal answers to both questions are affirmative, and we have been actively pursuing that with AOAS. One idea to improve the broader impact of our journals and also to draw attention from outside the statistics community is to maybe encourage dual publications. That is, the scientific discovery of a project is published in domain-specific journals, while the sophisticated statistical modeling part can be published in statistical journals. Next slide, please. There have been a lot of inspiring discussions and ideas today, and I hope, as also, many other panelists mentioned, we hope we can go beyond the discussions and identify concrete steps that we all can take to enrich our field. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill, for your enlightening thought, and I'm sure we will come back to it, especially that we are our own enemies in the peer review system. So our next panelist is Chengchun Shi. He is Associate Professor of Statistics at the London School of Economics and Political Science. Chengchun.
Thanks, Heping. So first, I just want to thank Xihong for organizing this, and it is really a great honor for having me here. And Heping previously keeps saying that we have an all-star panel, and this might not be very 100% accurate. So I think all panelists except myself, excluding myself, are all-stars. And also, in the past few years, I do have some limited experience in some submitting papers to those ML conferences, to those AI conferences. So in the next 3 to 4 minutes, I will try to answer the questions from this perspective by comparing those stat journals versus ML conferences. So next slide. So first question, what are the limitations? Next slide, please. So we are statisticians to possibly address this question. So what I did yesterday is to spend roughly 20 minutes to collect the data from the internet and produce this plot. So essentially what this plot shows you is the number of papers published in a highly ranked machine learning conference, NeurIPS, and one of our leading journal, JASA. And I think you don't need to look at the legend in order to distinguish between these numbers. And I'm not saying the more papers, the better, but at least this demonstrates the popularity of those machine learning conferences. So next slide, please. So this motivates me to conduct a detailed comparison between those ML conferences and our stat journals. And I guess most of us also know this. So those ML conferences, they are very quick. So there's only one round review, and the author just provide a rebuttal letter, and then it comes to the decision whether we should accept or to reject this paper. But to the contrary, we have multiple different rounds. And also those ML papers, they are very short, and the response letter, it is only limited to 1 page. But our stat papers, they are much longer. And also sometimes I write response letters which last for 20 or 30 pages. And the response letter itself can make a new paper. And in my opinion, this probably might be a waste of time. So next slide, please. So how can we change these journals? So next slide, please. So here are some of my suggestions from my opinion, and I'm not sure if they are proper. I'm the most junior people here. So please feel free to ignore this. So I think we should consider saving the time for both the referees and authors. And to achieve this, we can maybe shorten our papers and also impose the page limit for the response letter. So the response letter should only focus on addressing those major comments. And I think sometimes we might all have those experience. So referees should focus on raising essential comments. And I think sometimes referees, they might raise comments mainly for the purpose of raising the comments. So even if those comments they are addressed, the paper will not be significantly improved. So perhaps we should encourage referees to raise those essential comments only, and this will save a lot of time. And also possibly to shorten the review cycle to increase the number of references. And if you look at those ML conference papers, and they have a dedicated related work section, and for many papers they have a lot of references. So I think it is no longer 10 years or 20 years ago where everyone work on different problems. And nowadays, many people, we work on similar problems. And I think increasing the number of references encourage interactions in different fields. And it can also potentially improve our impact. And finally, I think AEs and the referees, we should be open to those emerging AI topics. And this is also very important to attract the papers from outside domains. And once more people, they are interested in submitting papers to our journals, and this could also potentially improve our impact. So that's all I want to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chengchun. And I think many of us agree with you that the reviewers are no longer referees. They actually are challenges to the authors. So we hope we can change the cultures. So next, our last panelist is Xiao-Li Meng. Xiao-Li, I don't think you need introduction.
Sorry, I should unmute myself. Thank you all. And first, let me say that it's really great, Xihong and Tent. You guys organize this. I think this is very timely, and happy to contribute a few words. Really, from my perspective, I've been having great fortune in the last 3 years, 5 years actually now, launching the Harvard Data Science Review, which kind of give me both an inside and outside view in terms of the interaction between statistics and data science, now broadly AI. So I want to just add these 3 points, which is mostly from my perspective, editing Harvard Data Science Review. So next, please. So I want to emphasize these 3 Ps. One is I think the statistical journals should be more proactive in shaping the direction and the spectrum in statistical research in the data science ecosystem. Journals tends to be most times, we just take whatever being submitted, we make a judgment how good they are, and we publish them. But I think in this era, particularly we're worried about the future of statistics. I think our journals can take a lot more proactive, actions into promoting and shaping what we think the statistical research should be in the data science ecosystem. I've been doing that for the Harvard Data Science Review, and I was not shy when we created Data Science Review. I said, I want to shape and define what data science is. We can do quite a bit of that. And next, please. I also think the statistical journal, we can do more to promote communication with the broad data science community. And one way to do that, we actually have a wonderful, wonderful tool, as several people already mentioned. For example, we have discussion articles. And that is something actually I learned because I was doing discussion articles quite a bit in Harvard Data Science Review. Outside statistics, certainly in computer science, in AI, lots of fields, they never heard of that. When I invite them to be discussing, they were really delighted. Said, well, what a great idea. And they want to join, but they don't even know how to write those things. So they ask me for providing examples. I think that's a wonderful way to both increase our presence in the broad data science community, but also really showcase, engage people into this deep thinking, because discussion tends to provoke people to think more carefully. I want to mention that Professor Dave Donoho's articles, Data Science at a Singularity, is published in HDSR, and we will have 15 discussants will be publishing the next month or so. And I would say only less than a quarter of them are from statistics. And you will read, it's all open, you will read how broad these perspectives are, and I think we can do a lot more in that domain. And next, please. The other thing I think that another P is, I think we journals should publish more on the data science processes then, not just the products. By products, we mean, the algorithm, the final results, and a theorem. But lots of data science, from the perspective I've seen, lots of discussions are really the entire process. And that's a lot more nuanced. There are lots of statistical thinking goes inside it, and we don't do that much in statistical journals. And I think if we want to get people really pay attention to what we do, a lot of people want to learn what these processes are, because they're far harder, far more complicated than just the final products. Next, please. So just to give very quickly, this is just HDSR. You can check any time. The next example, next, please. At the very beginning of the first issue of HDSR, I want to make sure, because I'm a statistician, I don't want to project the image that we're just publishing in a statistical journal. So I invite a data science, computer scientist, Janelle Wing, to publish an article on data life cycle. And she talks about, generation, collection, processing, storage, management, analysis, visualization, interpretation. It, to me, was, as a statistician, I said, wow, this is really broad, very broad. But until I get people to review her article from other fields, next, please. Then it reminds me, for example, I end up inviting philosophers to talk about data conceptualization, which is actually before the data generation. And I think these issues we statisticians should certainly take on, because we are the one, for example, emphasize how to ask the questions. Next, please. And then, on the other end, I got an information scientist coming to tell me, Xiao-Li, this is all great, but you forgot a very big area, which is how the data created being used how to reuse them in terms of data, for example, in terms of the data curation, provenance, because these are all very important for the scientific reproducibility. And if you read this article, all three articles in the first issue of Harvard Data Science Review, you will see that these articles that mostly going to talk about is our process. They're not talking about a particular product. But these are kind of conversations when we statisticians get involved, we will show, our deep thinking, how useful they are. Because otherwise, others are conducting these conversations, and I'm quite sure that we have a lot to contribute. I certainly have contributed quite a bit in these conversations. Myself really learn a lot from talking to this very broad data science community. Next, please. So just as the last example, that I was invited to write an editorial for the journal of the JRSS. This is JRSSA, and they want to publish any issues on data science. I was skeptical. I want to look at, are they really publishing data science, or they are publishing statistical articles with the term, data science, or the kind of fancier term. And so I wrote this whole article about emphasizing the data quality and what I call data mining, and also data confection, which is really talk about in an article about the difficulty you run into, the defect in your data, because I think that's one of the areas the statisticians can contribute a lot more. As I think one of the panelists said, that the data are, if we're waiting for other people to clean data, we're always behind, and we need to get into this whole process. Last slides. And in that article, I kind of analyzed the 8 articles published in the JRSA, and to look at what's the percentage of their articles are really devoted to other processes than analysis and the result interpretation. And this is a very rough counting using pages, but you can see L means very low. You can see that these articles published there, as in a way which is understandable, which is still mostly based rely on analysis and the results interpretation, a lot less on the, for example, pre-processing, which we all know as statisticians how important that is. If other people pre-process your data, and you are basically being restricted, whatever they have pre-processed. But this is just a tiny bit of analysis to showing the kinds of things we emphasize, which we completely understand. That's what a statistic has been about. But I think if we really want to play a leader role in the broad data science community, in enterprise or AI, we should have brought our perspective. We should have brought our discussions writing. I think articles, I would have pushed all journal articles, journal editors say every article, if you analyze the data, you should have a section on data quality, how the data were collected, all those things, because these are nitty-gritty place where we do not pay much attention. You talk to any real data scientist in the industry, and they would tell you that 80-90% time is spent on clean the data. It's not on the final how to analyze them, which we're not really winning there. But I think we have a lot to say, a lot to contribute if we go from very beginning thinking about all the statistical thinkings about how to make the data of the high quality, because that is essentially, to me, is one big direction for the future of statistics. Thank you.
Thank you, Xiao-Li, for sharing your work, expertise, and experience and insights. And Dave, next is you will be the discussant.
Okay, can I let's see if I can share screen. Okay, so I just want to make one comment here, which is statistics has been around 100 years in the current model, where there's a probabilistic generative model, and we state a problem and we derive consequences, and the outcome of a statistics paper in, say, Annals of Stat is a theorem. Now, the thing is, the world has changed. And just to understand that, 2 or 3 years ago, if you looked at the world of the Air Force, people would say that the culmination of 130 years of flying is the F-35 Lightning on the right, which costs a life cycle like $500 million. And nothing can shoot it down, and it can, kill you from halfway around the world and whatever, right? But On the left-hand side of this plot, you see the Chinese-made sunflower that came out in the beginning of this year. It's a drone, which, once the Chinese factory system gets going, it will totally revolutionize warfare. And the F-35A is going to be irrelevant once this thing is pumped out by the tens of thousands. The sunflower costs 1/10,000th of F-35A, and you can make millions of them. Okay, so the thing is, the Air Force has had its whole world upended by the existence of UAVs. And anybody who's in the Air Force is kind of having this moment of they're in denial that the world has changed. On the other hand, anybody who's not in the Air Force is looking at the sunflower and saying, the world has really changed. I just want you to think of that. An index of change here, if we look at publications, is if we look at the top 20 publications, what you see here are, Nature, New England Journal of Medicine, Lancet. These are things that have been in the top 20 for a long time. Then there's some highlighted names, which include the CS conferences. 10 years ago, none of these conferences were in the top leaderboard. This is leaderboard by their H5 index or H5 median or something. So now there's 3 of the top 10 venues in science are these conferences, and 5 of the top 20. In the mathematical sciences, there is not one journal that is up there in the top 50. Okay, so out of nowhere, something has come along and has sped to the top of the charts, right? Now, if we just go back to this, it took 100 years to get to this F-35A. It's taken 35 years to build the thing and get it deployed. It's supposed to be the combat strike fighter of the US Air Force in 2070. The Sunflower 200 didn't exist 2 years ago. It's come out of nowhere. Just want to understand that this is the same thing that's happening to journals right now. We've built these things that are like the F-35 that are incredible. The theorems, the generative models, they're amazing achievements of the human mind. But somehow out of nowhere, something's come along and usurped the world of attention. It's a kind of scientific revolution because people can write an 8-page paper by an exact formula, churn these things out. They get fantastic citation exposure by being in these journals. It's only 8 pages and it's quasi-algorithmic to write. It's also extremely modest in what it's trying to accomplish. And it's getting highly cited when they do full computational reproducibility so people can build on top of it. And these are sort of tricks that make the whole thing, work. Okay, so many correct things have been said, and far be it from me to critique all the editorial wisdom and experience that's been listed. So I'm certainly not going to. I certainly agree with the ideas that have been said about the difference between the stat journals and the AI conferences. That part of the reason that these journals have taken over is not just that the format is different, but that the refereeing process is different. The refereeing process, I think many people now think that their purpose as referees is to rewrite the person's paper or to make the other person's paper be more like they would like it to be. They have one job, which is to make it a better paper. If they can provide some insights to make it a better paper, that should count. But if they're doing something else, in a way, they should be scolded by the associate editor. I know that people are doing free labor, you don't want to scold them, but it would just simplify the refereeing process if the purpose of it is simply to make specific improvements. I totally agree, and I thank everybody who said that. Xiao-Li Meng has made many important comments in what he was discussing. One important thing in the CS conferences is that there's a lot of talk about workflows. There's a lot of talk about properties of data. There's a lot of talk about how those affect overall workflow performance there and so on. And so it's not out of topic for them to discuss all these issues. People are looking for important leverage that they can find in end-to-end system performance, and this conference publication format accommodates that. On the other hand, our prior belief that what we're delivering is a generative model and a theorem about the generative model kind of rules out any of these things. So when you look at what Xiao-Li was saying in his JRSSA paper, he's sort of saying no one in statistics believes that they can discuss these things. Whereas people who are involved in CS conferences, they do believe that they can discuss these things. So again, in the regime of wearing the AI t-shirt, I think we maybe want to start discussing these things more and make it more integral to what we do. I certainly believe that the suggestions that have been made to improve the proactivity and engagement of our journals with this new world, that those are very called for. And I'm sure that everyone who spoke about some of the changes they want, I'm sure that they're right. I can't judge those changes, but I'm sure there's many opportunities for that. So thank you for the opportunity to discuss. I hope all of these suggestions that the panelists have made shake loose people's thinking, and that we see many new publication opportunities, platforms, and venues. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. You touched on all the important points that the other panelists have discussed. Jen and Xihong, how we are doing in terms of the time? I want to make sure we have enough time for the last session.
So maybe let's Jiasun ask one question. And
Okay.
yeah. You are muted, Jiasun.
Okay. Yeah, I want to just comment on Xiao-Li and Dave's comment about the data set. Okay, so a lot of time, like writing a methodological papers only take like several months, but collecting a real data set and clean them, it really just takes years. Like I have a team with Tracy and Peng Shengqi and the students. Just takes years to collect, like more than 3 years to clean the data set. So, but in the end, it's hard for us to find a place to publish. And the part we can publish the method series, still multiple series. It's a very hard to find a place to publish the data collecting process, cleaning process, which has a lot of issues. Okay, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Yeah, Jason, just for your information, for all the New England Journal papers that publish it, it takes 100 people to collect it for 5 years for one article. So it's not actually a piece. It's not as simple as quick as we would expect it.
So Jiaxun, there is. Sorry, I
Sorry.
should have raised my hand. I'm sorry. Jiaxun, there is a Nature journal called something like Data or Data, something to do with data publication that you may want to know about.
Okay.
Okay, Xiao-Li, be quick.
Very quick. First, Joshua, you can always send to Harvard Data Science Review. Number one.
Okay.
Number two is that I think most importantly that we need to change our training. The students need to be encouraged. Do this kind of work will be respected. Otherwise, who's going to do it? Like take years. I learn a lot from these social scientists, right? They do these qualitative studies. They take 10 years to collect 2 cases. And just because they have to interview those are much harder but that's well respected. When they send to statistical journals, they get shut down and say, well, you only have sample size 2, so that doesn't work well. So I think there's I guess the perfect for next session, we'll talk about data science education, the education broadly. And I think that we need to create cultures that this kind of work is actually harder, much harder, because it's not clean. But that's where we make the real contribution, right?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And Tianxi, be quick.
Oh, just quickly, the journal is called Scientific Data. There are also journals like a Nature Protocol, and also under Cell, there's another protocol exactly try to help us to publish that kind of process.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And be quick.
Just one quick comment, Jiaxin, for your information. AOAS is willing to consider data-centric papers as well. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Thank you.
I hand to Xihong now.
Great. All right. So let's